welcome to our Get Informed session with Matt Turner. It's our communications clinic. I'm Anna Christie, I'm the Chief Executive for the Sussex Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is holding regular sessions. We're holding webinars. We've already held one on HR and furloughing. We've held one on the CBILS, and we have got others coming up as well, and making sure that we're bringing relevant information to all of our members and businesses. It's important that we all continue to market and promote our businesses, especially during this time. We have to ensure our business continues to thrive. So for business owners, marketing, communications teams, you must be look at taking a lead and supporting other businesses as well as supporting your own business. This is how we can respond to the current COVID situation. So for this session, I've invited Matt Turner, CEO of Creative Pod, to go through some tips and advice. We have got a presentation, so if you bear with me, I'm just going to bring that presentation up and then I'll hand over to Matt.
So firstly, thanks for joining us this morning. I know it's been a really, really tough and difficult, 4 to 5 weeks for everybody actually, but I do think it's a really valuable opportunity, and I don't think it's as bad and as doomful as it could possibly be. Very, very different to the 2008 recession, partly because I feel with this, we're all in it together. So, and if you want to go to the first slide, and I can give a little bit of background just to set the scene. So I first started Creative Pod in 2006. I was 20 at the time, so that's going back a bit. Saw my first recession at really 22. Was very naive to it, sailed straight through it, and really didn't kind of get too affected, partly because of that naivety. Won a plethora of different awards all over the place, and now Creative Pod sits within the group, which is a group of 6 companies, all pretty much in the creative industries, from sponsorship to print, SEO and full service marketing. And for my sins, I also bought Crawley Town Football Club back in 2013 and sold it in 2016. And that was a very, very interesting journey, to say the least. And I can tell you some stories about that at a later time. So next slide, Anna, if you wouldn't mind. This is my office, and this is really my number one rule, my number one tip to start this session with you guys. So regardless of coronavirus or a recession or any kind of environment that I feel business operates in, this is the one thing every business owner needs to do, and that's remove the dickheads. We know what they look like, we know how they treat us, and we know really ultimately what they do to impact our bottom line. So once you clear these people out of the way, it makes life a lot easier, it makes the business a lot simpler to run, and it just gives you the ability to actually make money, more importantly. And I think that's what we're all here to do, is make money, pay our bills, pay our people, and do good things. So on to the next slide, Emma. So for some reason the text is a bit scrunched up. I think it's because we're screen sharing. But the one thing I want you all to do is really think about this question, ask yourself this question, and then what we'll do at the end, I'd like to see if we can answer as many of your questions at the end. I'm assuming you're happy to have a Chatham House rules and super confidential between us all. So if anybody wants to say something that is private and confidential to the business, they can do. If not, I'm happy to donate an hour's time to each and every one of you and do a one-to-one and get that in the diary, and we can do things behind closed doors. So, I mean, honestly, guys, the number one thing to do is to keep calm. It is a challenge, and you've got to rise up to the challenge. And I feel like you go through these 4 stages. Like the first stage is almost like denial. You don't believe it's going to pass. That next stage is almost shock that it is real, and you've got to come to terms with it. The following stage after that is kind of anger and frustration, because your hands are slightly behind your back, and then you kind of come out the other end. So really, I guess the key here is to rise to that challenge. Look at the business, look at where you can pivot and see what else you can do, and are there any other opportunities? Could you digitize the business? It's been something on your list and you've been procrastinating and wanting to get it done and just have never got round to it. And this is a really good opportunity to do that. And I know some people on the call are already doing it. I guess for me, what I'd like you to get from this session is a bit of peace of mind, some top tips, little snippets that you can go away and apply to your business. And I'd like to think very, very quickly, you'll start to see the impact and the positive changes that some of those. So you hear it all the time. Is all PR good PR? Guess it depends who you ask. If you asked Prince Andrew 5 weeks ago, probably would have said no. But interestingly enough, I think when you look at the landscape at the moment, and next slide, please, Anna. When you look at the landscape at the moment, this chap here has always been a bit of a hero. And at the moment, he's coming across as enemy number one. And I think when you look at someone like Richard Branson, they've built their business on marketing. They've built their business on PR and messaging and communications. But it's funny how during this type of a pandemic and turmoil around the world, it's actually some of the wheels are starting to fall off, and it's not necessarily as glossy as it may look. So for all of you at the moment who are still billing customers, you're turning over more than Virgin Atlantic, so you should be very pleased and proud of yourselves. You know, I think when we all look at ourselves in our little bubbles, life can sometimes look quite challenging and difficult, but I can promise you there is somebody somewhere out there, even with $4.4 billion under the bed, that's pretty much worse off than you are currently right now. Next slide, please, Anna. So, most important thing, what's your story? Doesn't matter what you do, what your industry is, what background you're from, you need a story, you need a narrative. And something that you might think is completely mundane and almost irrelevant actually is quite a valuable story that can be shaped and scoped and rolled in glitter and then rolled out and communicated to your existing clients and your prospective clients. Nobody can say they haven't got a story. Every single person on this call has a story of some sort. And it's packaging that story up, connecting with the audience and taking them on a journey. And that story doesn't necessarily have to be about what your business does or how your business operates or the services or products you provide. It could be about your people. It could be about your customers. It could be about things you've done within your community. But it's all of those little touch points that we're going to go through that actually create that narrative and create that connection. And the interesting thing is, and anybody who's a retailer or an e-commerce business, this is probably a little bit different. But for all of us that are service-based businesses on this call, our businesses aren't actually built on what we do for a living. They're built on us as individuals. People meet us, they trust us, they like us, they can afford us, and they buy us. And because of the current landscape, a lot of that human interaction is obviously now gone, but we need to keep up the narrative. We need to keep up the rhetoric and keep pushing forward with connecting with people and having those conversations and having some discipline around what we're doing so that we can package up our messaging and we can distribute it and communicate it to those who need and want to see it. Next slide, please. So, social media, one of the easiest forms of marketing. It's super cheap. You can literally do it off your phone, or you can join the dots up. And what I would say with clients is that whatever you're doing from a marketing perspective, always set yourself goals and objectives. Otherwise, what will happen is that in 6 months' time, you'll look back and you'll think, well, that was a waste of time, or that didn't work. And really what you should do is view marketing communications like weight loss. So whenever you try and lose weight, you set yourself a goal on what that weight is. And sometimes you lose weight quickly, sometimes you don't, and it takes time. And marketing is exactly the same. You can't expect to send one social media post and get a load of inquiries, just like you can't expect to do 10 minutes on the treadmill and have a beach perfect body. It takes time, it takes commitment, it takes learning and effort, and different things work differently for different people. So never get disheartened if something isn't working. Look at why it's not working, change it, amend it, and then move forward. So what I'd like to do is just run you through some of the social media platforms and some of the different things you should be thinking about whilst on those platforms. Next slide, please, Anna. LinkedIn, something I would say is relevant to each and every one of us on here. B2B platform, I would recommend posting sort of 2 to 4 times a week. You don't need to flood it because of the way the algorithm works. It's not like Twitter that's just on this constant loop. Really good for company updates, presentations, thought pieces, blogs, and some of the pay per click boosted advertising opportunities are really, really good. Slightly expensive, but that's because of the quality of the data on the platform. So here you can see on the right-hand side, I put a post out very early on when coronavirus hit. Didn't put any money behind it at all. Completely organic, and within a week it had 10,000 views. And if I'd put some money behind it, I probably could have doubled that quite easily, and still could. So that just shows you the reach and the impact that content can have. And that's a really easy thing that you can go away and do and apply to all of your businesses. A lot of people sit there with social media and think, well, what do I write and what do I do and all the rest of it. Don't write your content day by day. Write it week by week or in 2 weekly blocks, and then use a platform like Buffer or Hootsuite to manage that content and distribute that content. Because then, you know, from those analytical tools, you can tell when your audience is online. You can tell when your account is most active. So you can be posting the right sort of content at the right time to the right people. If you don't use those tools, you're effectively singing in an empty room. And it's a bit of a pointless exercise. So LinkedIn, super powerful. Make sure your profile is up to date, header pictures, you know, avatar photos, all your experience, and keep it regular. And also the other thing is tone. I find at the moment, tone is so important. I'm meeting lots of people who are actually doing very, very well at the moment, and they're almost embarrassed by it because so many people are struggling. So getting your tone correct, I think, is really, really important. And that kind of genuine, empathetic approach, it stands out and people take note of it. Next slide, please. Twitter. Twitter's an interesting one for me. I love Twitter. I'm on Twitter. It's a bit like a pub, and everyone in the pub is just having a massive brawl and you're outside just looking through the window watching it all kick off. I'm not sure it's necessarily the perfect tool for business, but it is one where there's a lot of fast moving content. People do use it, you know, and it does spark up conversations. I've had a few introductions that have come off the back of Twitter. There are pay-per-click advertising opportunities, but the interface and back-end systems behind Twitter is fairly primitive. It's certainly the worst of the bunch. And I think if you're putting content out on Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn, for the sake of it, it makes sense putting it on Twitter. It really does. If you have got social media icons on your website and you're not posting any content on social media, take the icons off the website, because people will click on them, see you haven't done anything from them, and it basically looks like the business is being run by dinosaurs, and it's just not the image you want to portray. So if you are going to engage with social media, make sure you actually engage and do it regularly. And you can plan all of that. You can plan it all, you can schedule it all, so you can literally sit back and haven't got to worry about it. You can just get cracking. Next slide, please. Facebook's an interesting one, especially if you want to target that kind of 45 to 60-year-old market. What you've got to remember is 10 or so years ago, they were in their 20s and 30s. Now they're heading on a bit. And it is a slightly older community from that perspective, but it knows so much about you. It knows it probably knows more than your wives and husbands know about you. It's incredible. And that comes with very, very powerful analytics for you to drive content, drive data, and activate something called remarketing, where your content follows your viewers around for 30 days off the back of the cookies that are enabled through it. And we've done some really interesting things for clients on Facebook. So, you know, putting chatbots into their Facebook page, so when visitors visit their page, the chatbots talk to them to try and obtain their contact details, so you can then convert them as a client. And I mean, to give you an idea, we've got one client in particular who are surgical and non-surgical plastic therapy, plastic surgeons. So all the way from, you know, a hydrofacial all the way through to boob jobs and everything else in between. So their chatbot generates about 80 leads a month off their Facebook page for them. And on their paid advertising, they spend about 500 quid a month. So you work that out, but, you know, 500 by 78, and you can start to see what your, you know, cost per customer is worth. And then their average customer spends around about £600 to £800. And then the lifetime value of their customer, they know. So then you can start working out whether the return on investment is working or not. Sometimes people start with a very small budget, and sometimes the budget's too small. So often I'll have clients come to me and they'll say, I've got £300 to spend. What's the best thing I could do with it to get a good return on investment? And honestly, I tell them to keep it. You know, it doesn't touch the sides in that instance for what they want to do with it. So it's about being kind of practical and realistic as well. And I think the key with any type of marketing is to know when you're flogging a dead horse. There seems to be like two kind of environments. One where someone says, oh, it doesn't work, and that's because they pulled it too quick and they haven't let it build up that momentum. And the other side of things is is where it's gone on for a month of Sundays. They haven't changed it, tweaked it, or checked any of the analytics or data behind it, wasted a shed load of money, and then they've said, yep, it doesn't work. And they're right, it doesn't work. And by that point, you've wasted a load of budget and you're disconnected to it. So next one, please. So Instagram, if you're advertising on Facebook, you might as well advertise on Instagram, because Facebook owns both platforms. You effectively get a buy one, get one free. I do feel that Instagram is slightly for the pretty people, and for businesses who are a little bit more visual and a little bit more engaging. Our clients are extremely anal about how their tiles look on Instagram and how that looks from a visual perspective. So, but again, you know, you're connecting with a different audience. There's a big audience on there. The pay-per-click boosted advertising opportunities are extremely valuable and rich, and they sit hand in hand with Facebook. So you do kill two birds with one stone. And if you're not on Instagram as a business, I would definitely get on it and kind of have an experiment. And I think really that's one of the valuable takeaways from this coronavirus pandemic, is that for the first time I can ever remember in my career, and there are people on this call who have been in business a hell of a lot longer than I have, but I can't ever remember there being an opportunity where we could actually take it apart, rebuild it, put it back together, and everybody's still waiting for us. I've always felt like over the last 10 years, if I've wanted to make a change or a major change to my business, it's a bit like somebody asking me to change a tire as I'm driving the car. And as you can imagine, that's not an easy feat to do. But I do feel at the moment, we're almost been given the opportunity to pull over, change all 4 tires, rebuild the engine and have lunch, and everybody's still waiting for us. So I would, if you haven't, use this as an opportunity to really sort your house out, you know, sort the website out, sort the messaging out, train your staff on LinkedIn and how to get the most out of LinkedIn rather than how to find their next job and move to a competitor. You know, all those things you've wanted to do, your CRM, your processes, data, cleaning up your database, all of those things, now is the perfect time. And I'm not sure we'll ever get such a valuable opportunity to be able to do that again. So if you're not on any of these platforms, use this as an experiment. Try it out, have a play with it, see how you get on, do it for the next 8 weeks, and then start analysing it, say, every 2 weeks. And you'll start to see pretty quickly whether you're on the right tracks or not. Next slide, please. Charity. You know, a lot of people say charity starts at home. Whilst that is true to a certain degree, I think, you know, charity should be at the heart of every small business. I know it often feels like we are the charity sometimes, but actually what I've often found throughout my career is the more you give, the more you get. And I genuinely believe that the more we've donated to charity, the more we've generated as a business. And we did a little interesting experiment a couple of weeks ago where we went through all of the things we've done for charity over the last 10 years. And we worked out that as a business, when we're only a small company, we've raised over £1 million for charities across Sussex in 10 years. And for those of you who aren't aware, I am a patron for Chestnut Tree House, the end-of-life children's hospice in Sussex. Give you an idea, it costs 400 grand a month to run the charity. And at the moment, revenue's 70% down. And that's massive. And so, you know, supporting those charities are really important. So some of the stuff we've done as organisations, that photo of me with those interesting ladies. So I wrote to James Corden and asked him if I could have the intellectual property for Carpool Karaoke if I did it for a children's hospice. And he very kindly said yes. So whenever there's a celebrity that visits the hospice, I pick them up, we have a bit of a sing-song, interview them, video the tour, and then there's a text giving number when that goes out. And that's generated a couple of grand. I jumped off Worthing Pier dressed as Batman in the Birdman. That was a horrific experience. I abseiled Arundel Castle for Chestnut. I felt like a Fathers for Justice campaigner. And it was just, you know, just things that take me outside my comfort zone. I danced in the Midsummer Ball. We generated £100,000 in 4 minutes. And we had to do a 5-song Grease medley with Marcella Whittingdale from BBC South East. I was like a cross between Ricky Martin and Nelly the Elephant. It was epic, and there's evidence of it on social if you want to see it. Other things we've done, so very recently, we did a social campaign where you could nominate a frontline worker, and for that we would send them an Easter egg as a thank you. I mean, to give you an idea, we spent about 200 quid on that campaign, so nothing at all. and we had nearly 250,000 impressions. So it just shows you the reach you can get. And I think we had over 400 people enter and nominate across our different platforms. 427 is another company of mine in the group. It's a business that we acquired a stake in December, and they're a full service SEO business. They just do solely SEO, and they are brilliant at it. And one of the campaigns we launched with them is that if you run a small business and your wife, husband, or partner, what have you, is an NHS frontline worker, we will give you £3,000 worth of SEO services. And that's gone down really, really well. It's opened up lots of doors. And it's just a really nice thing to do. So I think that's really important, that community engagement piece, whether it be from a fundraising perspective or a supplies and materials perspective, any of those sort of things are a really valuable opportunity for you to raise your profile, actually do something good. And the other thing I always think about is when the Iron Curtain is lifted and we all start to go back to some sort of level of normality, people are going to be looking at you, and people will have been looking at you. And it's funny, I've already had messages of people on LinkedIn who have said, when this is over, we really want to work with you because of the stuff we've done. I've had a few, I mean, this is an interesting one. I've had a few people contact me again on LinkedIn who are what I would call 60, 65 grand a year marketing managers in London, but they live in mid Sussex. And they've said, when this is lifted, I want to talk about coming to work for you. And that, you know, these are people that are willing to take a 15 grand pay cut, a 20 grand pay cut, because they appreciate some of the things that we're doing for our staff and our clients and our wider community. And I think this charity piece can sit at the heart of anybody's PR and marketing communications efforts. It really, really can. And it's a good thing to do as well. So when we work with clients, when we onboard clients, one of the things we actually do is talk to them about charitable engagement. And I have had examples in the past where I have met the odd individual who says they don't believe in charity. And needless to say, the conversation didn't go much further than that, because I think it's really important to be philanthropic, certainly during times like this. So, give that a thought. And if you are already doing charitable things, and so many people are, they don't talk about it. They're either really humbled, or they don't know how to package it up and communicate it and distribute it, or they're too shy to. I would strongly advise against that. And I think it's really, really important to do that and to play your part in the community. Next slide, please, Anna. So, virtual speaking opportunities. In my old slides, this was public speaking, but obviously that's changed to a certain degree. Each and every one of you, all of the things that I'm going through today, you can take away and you can apply to your business literally overnight. Do the planning first and then start implementing it. So by speaking essentially on Zoom calls or webinars and seminars and all those sort of things, it creates opportunities. You've got people tuning into you, they want to talk to you, you can provide value to them. And that value piece, I think, is really, really important when you're in a service-based business. When we onboard clients, we do a whole process around value, because if you don't know what's valuable to somebody, you'll end up giving them something that doesn't meet their expectations. And value looks very, very different to many different people. So I would really, really, really emphasize doing these sort of speaking opportunities, even if it's one-to-one sessions with people as well. And I mean, I've got a number of clients who over the last year, one of their objectives has been to improve their public speaking skills. And it can be quite daunting if you're not very good at it or you've not done it before, especially standing up in front of, 50, 100 people, whatever it may be. But actually using this coronavirus situation to improve your public speaking skills is the perfect time, because you haven't got to stand up in front of 50 or 60 people. When you're on a Zoom call, you're lucky if 4 of them can see you. So if you are nervous about things like that, I think now is a really, really good time to do it. And you can educate people. You can, again, provide value whilst becoming a thought leader. So if you're not doing speaking opportunities, I really think you should look into it and find the right ones for you. I know Anna and the Chamber are always looking for interesting subject matters. And it isn't about quantity, it's about quality. So some of you might be better off just having a round table with 5 people, but those 5 people are really killer contacts that actually will make a difference to your business. And I'd definitely put that on your list to do. Anna, next slide, please. The team. This is something I think is probably the most important thing as a business that we've been focusing on for a while now, is that team piece. It's funny, isn't it? Like, we're all the owner managers and we're always pretty motivated and pretty engaged, and we know where we're getting up in the morning. And I think sometimes we forget that our employees aren't wired that way. And I think that's probably why they're employees and not employers. And I think as well, employees can be quite ignorant because they don't know what they don't know. So when this coronavirus issue hit, one of the first things I did with the team is I sat them all down and we played, we did a quiz. It was like Bruce's Price is Right, higher and lower. So I got an Excel sheet up on the screen. There were 3 columns. The first column was a list of all of our fixed costs every month, line by line by line by line. Next column was blank, third column was blacked out, and I put the actual numbers in. And we sat down as a business, the whole team, and we went through each line: rent, payroll, electric, rates, maintenance on the building. They didn't even realise you had to pay maintenance. And we went through it all, and would you believe it, they were £1,500 a month out. I was blown away by their accuracy, but what they didn't realise is when you added up all those line entries, what it actually came to. And when they saw that bottom number and they saw that thing, like, wow, it made such an impact. And it's already I only did it 5 weeks ago. And I would probably say in the last 14 years, that was the most valuable thing I've ever done with my employees, because all of a sudden they get the economics of the business. They're understanding money a lot more. They are understanding the way, business owners think and work. And it kind of puts things into perspective a little bit. And as a result, we're making more money because they're more mindful of cost. So it's been a really, really valuable process. The other thing is, I think during this process and this period, it's really important to look after your team, even if they're furloughed. Furlough, I'm seeing lots of different things. Some people are treating their furloughed staff like staff on maternity leave, where they're saying, oh no, we'll talk to them in 9 months' time when they've had the baby. It's really, really weird. And what I would say is I can see problems later on down the line where the Iron Curtain's lifted, we all start going back into the office, into the workplace, and it's going to take businesses 3, 4, 6 weeks to kickstart their team to get them match fit again, if that makes sense, because they've become extremely unfit because they've been sitting at home doing nothing. And that's going to have another impact in the business. Some people might not come back altogether. So whether your team are working, whether they're furloughed, I would really, really look after them and support them and engage them. And you don't have to go crazy. It can be very affordable and simple. So one of the first things I did was arranged for everyone in my team to see a financial advisor, and I picked up the bill for it. And it wasn't very much at all. And even members of the team were saying, well, I don't need a financial advisor. And I was like, that's exactly why you need a financial advisor. And they'd never thought of that. So that's more added value from me. We send them lunch, just a Domino's pizza or a delivery or whatever. And again, it turns up as a surprise and it's a real treat, and they really, really like it. And, it's good for them to know that the people at the top of the ivory tower actually genuinely empathetically care for the team, for the business. And it's made a real difference. For me, the other thing I think I found with my team as well is that we have a 9 o'clock call and a 4 o'clock call every single day. And I'm being brutally honest with you, I was dreading it a little bit because you know what it's like when you're running a business. It's full steam ahead. Your foot's on the throttle, and having to pause sometimes and communicate sometimes can be difficult when you think everybody knows what's in your head and they genuinely don't. And for me, the one thing I've found really valuable is that it's enabled me to actually build a meaningful relationship with my team rather than just like boss-employer, a boss-employee type relationship. It's actually added some meaningful, tangible kind of gumph behind the relationship. And it's interesting. One of the things that transpired is I think some of the members in the team didn't actually know what I did for a living. I think they saw what I did, but didn't know what that meant. And often having lunches and breakfasts and networking and public speaking and going to the odd meeting here and there, it looks quite an easy life. And by having these calls and having this level of dialogue and engagement with the team has actually opened up their eyes, and again has completely changed the dynamics of the team. It really has. And for me, that is such an important facet, because your team will go out into their local networks and communities and families and social media, and they will genuinely talk to you. Just like if you were a bad boss, they would be spreading and saying maybe some not so nice things. So look after your team, and that's such an important part, especially as they're an extension of your voice and your brand, and your message. And also, if you don't have a story and you don't have a narrative or anything like that, and the business has completely and utterly ground to a halt, just by looking after your team, you can create content. I posted a post on LinkedIn after the team had received pizza. Within 3 days, it had 6,000 views. And to the extent where the company that manages our HR called me up and said, we didn't think of that. We're going to do that for our own staff, and we're going to suggest it for all of our other customers. So it's inspiring people to actually look after their people. And it's not expensive. It doesn't cost a lot. And it's a small gesture that goes a very, very long way. Next slide, please, Anna. So here you go. Here's some clips and content. We have Friday drinks. It was a member of the team's birthday, so we sent them all sent a birthday gift. We sent them pizzas. You know, one of our members of staff lives down on the south coast and gets the train into work. So I drove down his chair and his computer and everything directly to him. That's the other thing to think about. You know, have you spoken to your teams about their working environment? I've seen photos of people working off an ironing board. You know, the least we could do as bosses is give them a comfortable seat to sit at if they're going to sit there for 8 hours a day, hopefully, and work their backsides off for us. So think about all those sort of things, because they are going to have a long-term impact. And I promise you, those are the little things that would enable you to have a team that's there for the long haul. And they'll look after you 3, 4, 10 times over a longer period of time. So I think that's really, really important. Next slide. Work-life balance. So this is one area that I completely and utterly suck at. For me, like, work-life balance is work-sleep balance, and there really wasn't much of that life balance. And for me, like, the really nice thing about coronavirus is that I feel like it's given me a little bit of a work-life balance. And I want to share something with you I think it's really, really interesting. So as an entrepreneur and a business leader, I have one gear, and it's 100 miles an hour. There really isn't many gears in between that. But as employees of the business, you know, their 100% is my sort of 55%. And I've spent a decade trying to make everybody run as fast as I can run, but ultimately not many people can ever keep up. And it's always been a problem. And it's always meant that the ship has always been slightly lopsided. And this situation with coronavirus has actually made me have to slow down, because I can't do what I used to do. I can't operate at the pace that I used to operate. I tell you what, it's been amazing, because by me slowing down effectively means that I'm now rowing at the same pace as the team, albeit a lot slower than I used to row. But because we're all now rowing in harmony and in synergy, we're actually moving much quicker than we used to. And I think that was a really valuable, interesting takeaway for me, and something I would never, ever have done if it wasn't for coronavirus. If anyone had said, maybe you should slow down and see if you can just go as fast as your team, I would have probably giggled at them and told them to be quiet. So this is, for me, that was a really kind of valuable thing. The other thing, I'm seeing the kids more. You know, I'm getting tuck them in bed at night, reading them a story, you know, all those kind of family things that I missed out on because I was always at a chamber networking event, Anna, or you know, or awards or dinners or whatever it may be. So it has kind of given me that work-life balance to a certain degree. And I am finding that I'm still getting just as much done. I am being probably twice as proactive as I was before, because I'm not driving as much as I used to, you know, at all actually. But, you know, you think before, if you do 3 meetings a day, all those trips driving around, 15 trips a week, you know, it all starts to add up. And whether that be from petrol and hospitality and everything else in between, that's money that isn't being spent at the moment. So I'm being more productive. I'm probably looking after myself a little bit more. I'm looking after my family a little bit more. The team is rowing in unison for the first time that I can ever remember. And that would never, ever have happened without something as negative as coronavirus. So I think, really going back to my opening gambit, whilst there's all of this doom and gloom and all of these problems, it's really valuable to take those pluses and those silver linings out of this. And we can all do that. And every single person on this call can do that. Next slide, please, Anna. And then what I've done is I've kind of put my top 10 tips together. Keep calm, rise to the challenge. If you don't keep calm, you'll make mistakes. You won't see opportunities, and it will just go to pot very, very, very quickly. Embrace the change. You can't fight it. You can't change it. You can't influence it. So you kind of have to deal with the hand you're dealt. And this is a really valuable time to test you. You know, I think as entrepreneurs and business leaders and business owners, we can often fall into a rut and not even realize it. And that's one of the reasons I do lots of charity work, is because it keeps me on my toes. It takes me outside my comfort zone. It gives me things that I don't normally get from business. And I think this is a really valuable opportunity to take you outside your comfort zone, for you as leaders to step up. And if you're calm and you step up to it and you embrace the change, that filters onto your employees. It's a bit like children when they fall over and graze their knees. If you make a big fuss of it as a parent, they start crying. If you don't blink an eyelid, they just get back up and carry on playing. And I think embracing that change and being really calm around it is very important. And it's something you can take on to the future of the business. Look after your team. You know, again, I made a pretty big point on that. And I think looking after your team is really, really valuable. Using social media to engage, update, communicate, be positive. Again, depends on your industry and your business. The strategy needs to be right. And that just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of thought to get that right and nailed down. But you should all definitely be using social media. Be a thought leader, rise to that occasion, help people out. You know, I'm doing loads of free one-to-one sessions with people, and you know, I'm giving them lots of advice, and then 2, 3, 4 weeks later, they're ringing me up and going, bloody hell, it worked. And I always smile when I get that, because I always wonder whether they go to the doctors after he's given them a prescription. They go back, bloody hell, those pills worked. So it's always really nice to hear that. And you know, again, that is something you will take on and forward with you, add value. Look for commercial opportunities. It's easier said than done, I know, but when you look at like the gin brands who are now making hand sanitizers, or fashion houses who are now making, you know, safety equipment or whatever it may be, there are still so many commercial opportunities out there. You might have to tweak your price a little bit, and that offering might have to be tweaked and amended accordingly. But trust me, there really are lots of commercial opportunities out there. And if you're struggling to monetize or commercialize or pivot the business to an area where it can be, you know, commercialized, I'm happy to talk to you and give you some tips and ideas. Again, remember, everyone's going through the same similar pressures. So when you go back to that 2008 recession, the most important thing was money. But looking at this current situation, money's not as important as it used to be. And I don't say that flippantly, because if you think back to those of you who were in business in the 2008 recession, if you owed someone money, they wanted it now. No questions asked about it. If you couldn't pay it, in went the heavies, and off that journey went. Whereas now, if you can't pay your bill, people aren't as grumpy as they used to be. People are being a lot more grown up. So payment plans and payment schedules and all those other things, and people are agreeing to them because they know we're all in the same boat together. So if there's liquidity trickling through at a slightly slower rate, it's a lot better than all of the cogs just freezing altogether. And that's something I've done as the owner of the business. Rather than wait for clients to come to me begrudgingly and nervously and say, oh, I need to talk about our bill, this, that, and the other, I've gone and rang every single client and said, look, rather than pause us, because we work on retainer, we'll carry on doing what we're doing. Just chip away at what you can afford to pay over, say, the next 3 months, and then we'll have a grown-up conversation, you know, in the next quarter. And they're over the moon with it, because it means there's one less thing to worry about. Not, touch wood, 9 out of 10 won't go under, but they will all remember. They will all remember that effort. And when other people were being difficult and wanting their bills paid straight away and talking rubbish, you know, the people who actually have been quite grown up about things and pragmatic and reasonable, I think will be those who are rewarded tenfold over the next 3, 4, 5 years as the business and economy starts to pick up again. That work-life balance, it's hard, isn't it, when you're a business owner? It's really hard. Sometimes I feel like being a business owner is a bit like being a drug addict. You know, no matter what anybody says to you, you just can't get off. And you want to push it harder and harder and harder. And the highs are unbelievably high and the lows are sometimes soul-destroyingly low. And often those people around you, your nearest and dearest, those closest people to you, are the ones who get you through it. And I've always joked, you know, we all attend business awards and all the rest of it as part of our rhetoric in business. I've always wanted there to be a category for Partner of the Year, where people can nominate all the wives, girlfriends, husbands, and everything else who have supported you, because, you know, they see it at your best, they see it at your worst, and they can't really do much about it to get you through it. So that work-life balance piece is so important. And if you've never been able to nail it like me, try and use this as an opportunity to get it right, essentially, and test it out. Now is no better time than ever to do that. And coming on to that, your messaging, test it. You always have to test your messaging, even when there's not a pandemic going on. So split test your messaging, try 2 different titles on email campaigns, try a number of different paid social media advertising campaigns where you're targeting different audiences. So you might have a campaign that targets 30 to 40-year-old women, and that will have a slightly different tone to the campaign that targets 30 to 40-year-old men, for argument's sake. So you can be really, really direct with your messaging. And of course, number 10, get rid of those dickheads. Honestly, the one challenge I would set all of you is to go away from this meeting and write a list of all of those individuals who are prickly within your life, and then give yourself 3 months to get rid of them. If you're married to them, it might take longer than 3 months, but I would really advise you get rid of them, because they are what are going to slow you down time and time again, and they'll take you off track and they will derail you. And if you can follow those top 10 tips, implement them into the business, and wrap some really nice messaging around it, I promise you, you'll come out the other side. Obviously, there's lots of other activity that can be done from a marketing perspective that we haven't touched on, like PR, like video content, like search engine optimization. You know, for those of you who are aware of what search engine optimization is, now is not the time to turn that budget off, because all of your competitors are. So if anything, turn it up, because what will happen is, because of the way the algorithms and the way the search engines work, they take several weeks, if not months sometimes, for your rankings to start improving. If your competitors are turning their budget off, they're effectively getting unfit, so they're falling down the rankings. If you're turning yours on, you're going to naturally get fitter from a digital perspective. And when, again, that iron curtain's lifted, you will have caught up with your competitors. Don't be transfixed on being on the first page. That is a bit of a myth, really. There's something called long tail keywords. So, and they're a lot cheaper to get, and there's a lot more of them. So rather than being like estate agent Brighton, for argument's sake, as a Google term, well, for starters, you've got 2 pages of aggregates like Yopa and Rightmove and Zoopla to get past, and there's no chance you've got budgets to compete with them. So when you look at other search terms like homes for sale Dyke Road or homes for sale Marine Parade, those search terms, no other estate agent even does anything for. So you'll naturally pings up really, really high, and you'll get quality leads, not quantity. It's all about quality. And like I said at the beginning, if anybody wants to talk to me or have some time with me, I'm more than happy to. Everything I've gone through with you, you can implement and roll out yourself. If you are thinking of engaging with a marketing agency or creative business to do it for you, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And often you do get better results, and they can teach you a thing or two. The only thing I would say is, when you pick your agency, don't pick your agency on price, and don't pick your agency on pretty pictures. When it comes to an agency, the two are almost irrelevant. The one thing you got to look for is chemistry. That's the only thing you got to look for. So you got to find an agency that you click with, that you can have a grown-up conversation with, that you feel genuinely understands you and your business and industry and everything else in between, because that relationship piece determines whether the relationship between you and an agency is actually successful. And you need to view your agency like your personal trainer. You still have to get out of bed in the morning. You still have to run on the treadmill, and then you have to pay them. There is not a magic wand in marketing like liposuction that can just do it all for you and ping you out the end, all working and being lovely. So you do have to put that effort in. So if you are going to go to an agency, make sure you get the right one. Make sure they've got the right experience. Do your due diligence, but most importantly, find somebody that you've got that connection. Next slide, please, Anna. And remember, no dickheads, that is the punchline for today. And it's the one thing I've seen over the last 4 weeks that has really affected people, slowing people down, and actually caused issues for business. So, Anna, do you want to go back to the question slide? I think it was slide 4, something like that, right at the beginning.
Shall I go back to that and then I'll stop the screen share? Okay.
Perfect.
That's all right. So we can see everybody and I can actually see the chat.
Let's have a look.
Okay. So that's what are your biggest challenges in marketing or communicating during this pandemic. So if everybody's okay, I'm going to stop the screen share. That's okay.
I saw someone's comment about the risk assessment. We did exactly that, actually. We made everyone do a risk assessment on their workspace. Yeah. And then literally like every other day, I sort of check in with the staff. Every other day, I ask if anyone even needs time off. Ask your team if they need time off. They're working 10 to the dozen. And actually, sometimes they just need to plug themselves out. One of my friends, he is a bit of a technology geek. So he created this little thing on his computer where he's put all of his staff names into this roulette lottery ball thingy coded. And every day at 4 o'clock, it pulls a ball out of the digital bingo, essentially. And it's got a member of staff's name on it. And he has to call that member of staff. And the conversation he has with a member of staff has got nothing to do with work. It's checking in, how you doing? Because a lot of bosses don't know about the dynamics within their staff's home. So we've got members of staff whose partners work at the airport and they've lost their jobs and this and the other. So that has a massive impact. And people behave differently when they're under a lot of pressure. And if you know what's going on, that again changes the way you deal with things. I'm just reading some of these other questions. If anyone is
okay, so I'm just going
Oliver
through.
H's
okay,
comment.
Right, I'm just going to see if anyone's got any hands raised first. There is an opportunity where you've got the delegates at the bottom, participants, that you can raise your hand if you want to ask any questions, or please just unmute yourself and go ahead with the question. Has anyone got any questions at all? Just looking to see if anything's come through. Right, you said Oliver, Matt.
Oliver made a comment about the analogy on rowing.
Yeah.
Well, I started rowing at school and I carried on through university and I still row, age 61. And I can tell you, if you cannot get your crew rowing together, you've got no hope of ever winning a race. Not one.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree.
Question, if I may, please. How do you suppose we should approach it? Because I'm a partner with RH and RW Clutton. We're chartered surveyors, we're land agents. We've been in business for 275 years. We provide personal and confidential property advice to people who own large and small properties. And we've always done this entirely by personal contact. Our current marketing program is dead because what we do is we sponsor point-to-points and
country fates and
country events.
Yeah.
And we attend drinks parties to mix with the people who might want to ask us to do something for them.
Have you ever thought about hosting a similar session to like this and getting sort of 10 estate stakeholders on a call, and it might be and do like a help and find type session? So it might be like, I need a tractor and mine's broken down and I can't get it fixed, and there's someone up the road who can lend me there so I can look after my estate, and we all sort of help each other as a small community. For someone like yourself, I think this could be an opportunity to build that community. And then along that way, you can be given advice on whether it be cost savings on certain things to do with the estate, or planning for a new barn that's going to go up for X, Y, and Z. and just build that relationship out. So again, when things start to come back into normality, you're front and center to pick up those relationship pieces.
Okay, I have another question. Sorry, Oliver, did you have anything to come back to Matt on?
We're not really quite as close to farming as buying and selling tractors, but it's not a bad idea in terms of wider estate planning, providing we can keep complete client confidentiality.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you. I have another question here from Andrew Lambert. What will members do in order to gauge the right time to resume their businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I asked. This is a slightly loaded question because we're looking at this ourselves. But I just wondered what tools and techniques people might be using apart from their gut instinct, and also what the law will allow. What will they use in order to gauge how ready their businesses are to start again, in whatever form that might be?
That's a really interesting question. I got an email yesterday from Coast Capital, from the Growth Hub. Let me dig it out, actually. And there is a growth mapper software. It's called Growth Mapper Recovery. Have you heard of this, Anna?
Yes, I have, yeah.
I mean, I'm wondering whether that's the sort of product that chamber members could get access to. You spend 15, 20 minutes filling it all in and answering all the questions, and then at the end of it, it gives you a whole sort of analysis, a map on the business and the future of the business and areas that it feels you need to focus on to be post-corona ready, shall we say.
I wasn't aware of that. I will check it out.
I think as well, the other thing is that it's interesting, like, resume their business. I don't think anybody should stop their business, to be fair. Like, if you're a retailer, then you should be going e-commerce. Look at what someone like Piglet's Pantry have done in literally a matter of weeks, or Ray's Bakery down in Worthing, or any of those businesses that are quite traditional, even Brighton Gin, quite traditional manufacturing, wholesaler, sales channel partners, no online retail presence. And now all of a sudden, that e-commerce opportunity that I've been wanting to do for the last 5 years has happened in literally 5 days. So for me, all businesses should be open.
Yeah, it's not always as simple as that. I mean, if you take Primark as a perfect example, their entire business model is based on high street shops, and they cannot suddenly go online. I mean, they're bound to have a team of people working in a bunker somewhere on this, but their entire business model is based on low margin, high volume sales.
Yeah.
And I know this because we did projects for them about 10 years ago. To go online to them would absolutely decimate their margin. So sometimes it's not as easy, but I take your point, certainly, that companies, businesses shouldn't have just, sometimes they do have to stop, but
I think it's how you determine stopping. So, like, if I was the marketing director at Primark, I'd be having a word with the logistics people to say, well, how many pairs of slippers do we have, and how many this do we have, and let's send it to hospitals, let's send it to underprivileged families, let's send it to hospices. Because their cost of sale is so low, they're getting, their running costs at the moment, apart from rent and rates and things like that, their staff are furloughed. What could they be doing in terms of raising their brand within the community?
Absolutely, and hopefully someone's thinking of that. But I think the online, it's very seductive to think, well, okay, just go online. But if your entire business model is based on a presence in the high street or wherever it might be, it's a lot more difficult than it seems. And I've worked in retail since the mid-90s, worked for retail. But I take the point.
I wonder as well whether there's an air of arrogance sometimes with some of these organisations. Are you telling me, with those hundreds of millions of pounds and all of those special advisors and all of those consultants and Billy Big Balls surrounded by them, no one ever suggested about disaster recovery or business continuity or any of that sort of thing? And if they didn't, someone needs to be fired for that sort of crap. Because if somebody in a 5, 6, 10 man business can do that, then they're the sort of things that the larger corporates should definitely have been
Oh,
talking
I
about.
couldn't agree more. I mean, I think business continuity is going to have learnt an awful lot of lessons, business continuity specialists and teams. And at the very top, I do hope the government's learning lessons as well, but that's,
agreed.
that's separate.
I mean, for me, I really feel like this really is one of the most valuable experiences we can go through as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. I really do, because it will determine the cowboys from the real genuine people, but also the skills and the things that it will teach us are going to be invaluable. Plus, it's making us get our backsides into gear.
Yes.
It's making us, you know, do all of those things we said we were going to do, from our will to our pension to, you know, the garden, or, you know, and that's just like the personal stuff, let alone, you know, we're having a lot of clients at the moment coming to us because they want rebrands and new websites and they want to tidy up their image. Over the last month, we've probably created 25 marketing campaigns that are sitting ready in the top drawer of, you know, CEOs up and down Sussex, ready for when Corona comes back out. So they're not fumbling around to put a campaign out, and they're not, I haven't even got to think about it. It's there, it's ready to go, and they're going to be front and center ahead of all of their competitors, who, as we've seen, are scrambling around and struggling.
Yeah. And
thank you, Andrew. Sorry, I just want to say, because we're running over time, and I've seen a few people have had to actually dial off from the webinar today. Maybe I've got time just to take a couple more quick questions before I just give a brief update. But I just want to confirm, Matt, you're happy for the slides to be shared, because it does have your contact details at the,
by all
at
means,
the end, doesn't it?
Connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me an email. I'm more than happy to give my time to you guys and girls, no problem at all.
Okay, let me just see if there are any more quick questions. I know a couple of people have posed questions, but they've had to disappear online. I can't see any other hands raised. Saying it was really inspiring, particularly like the charity ideas. And that was Suzanne and Conrad. I believe they have to go now. So
I think the other point I'd like to make is that if anybody is going to apply for any grants, there are lots of grants available from the LEP all the way through to government. And some of those grants allow for you to obtain money for your marketing. So
there's lots of things people can do. There's information on our website, whether it's grants, the CBILS loans, there's money from local authorities, there's furloughing staff and claiming money back from HMRC. There's lots of other things you can do personal as well to help with your finances, to help reduce costs, with your landlords as well, to see whether you can pay monthly rather than quarterly. So there's lots of tips and ideas as well. So please go through to our website. In that, I can't see any other questions or hands up. So I just wanted to share a few other insights very, very quickly before we bring this to a close today. So thank you so much for that, Matt. That's been really insightful.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And it's been really insightful, really inspiring. I can see lots of positive comments coming through.
Great.
And it is important that we continue to communicate with our clients, with businesses, with our teams as well, just to make sure that we're all in touch, they're aware of what's going on, but we're keeping our businesses going so that we're still building up those relationships and those contacts. We are planning other webinars. We've already held a couple on furloughing staff, on CBILS. We have got another one next week on working remotely and the impact on mental health. And we will be developing more on a weekly basis. Just to inform everybody, we do have daily conversations with British Chambers. This is where I am constantly feeding back all of the issues and the gaps and things that are happening still, that people aren't getting access to funding, or things are very, very slow in terms of the processing. Please feed that back to me. I'm happy for you to email me directly or contact me, but we do feed that back directly to ministers. So this morning we had the Right Honourable Liz Truss for international trade. We've been talking to HMRC about furloughing. We've also had the business banking. We've spoken to other ministers. So all of this is getting fed straight back to the ministers so that they can make immediate changes and make sure businesses are getting the support that they need financially. We've also launched Sussex Business Heroes. So going back to what Matt was saying about being in touch with the communities, lots of businesses have adapted to the current situation and are supporting frontline staff. We want to know and hear about these amazing stories and what people are doing. So please do let us know how your business is adapting and how we're helping support frontline staff, communities, or others. I don't think I have anything else there to say, but just open it up again, see if anyone's got any final comments or anything they'd like to add. Just seen a message here, a couple of messages coming through. Matt, excellent presentation.
Great, thanks ever so much.
Okay, did you have any final comments to make, Matt, at all? Any closing remarks?
I think we've kind of wrapped that all up. All I would say is if people are able to, you know, take some of those tidbits and bits of advice and then see if they can implement it into their business, I would love to know how you guys are getting on and the impact that's having, because I think it would be really, really interesting to see. Oliver, I've just seen your post regarding apps for analysis of social media. What I'll do is I'll grab your email address and I'll send you a list of apps that you can go and visit. And most of them have a free trial, and they're sort of $25–30 a month to then use thereafter. But please do go away and implement some of these ideas. Stay super positive. Don't let it get you down. And if you need a good bitch or you want to pick my brain, let me know, because it's not a problem at all.
And just one final comment from me, just a reminder that all of our members, in terms of marketing, to enhance and promote what you're doing, send us your news stories. There's lots of different marketing ideas through the Chamber. As part of your membership, continue to send us news stories. Depending on the level of membership, you can share videos, it's editorial. Please do send that through to us. It's another way of making sure your brand is out there in the business community, so that it will help you later on when we come out of this.
Great. And any reviews of this session, please feel free to go onto LinkedIn and say some nice things. Brilliant.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much. Goodbye from me.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.